Welcome to the 3 Minute Hustle, where we recall history and release an appeal to heaven for global awakening. Where was the world to turn in times of great sickness and the trauma of a global pandemic? It was the case in history in the mid 1840s when we begin to realize a virus that was born, history would tell us, in contaminated and polluted waters begin to infect a few, but that few begin to infect many others until literally tens of millions of lives had been lost in the 1840s to this gross contagion. It wouldn't be long until the mid 1840s when we would discover that indeed that infection would make its way to the United States, to Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, and Brazil. And by this time, the entire world was reeling under the weight of this pandemic. Why, 5,000 people had already been lost in New York, 8,000 in Cincinnati, Ohio, 3,000 in New Orleans, Louisiana, over 5,000 in St. Louis, Missouri, which was about 6% of the entire population. And what we begin to discover by 1849, over 150,000 American lives had been lost alone. That's not counting the millions around the world. So what was to happen? To whom were we to turn? It would be Henry Clay, a statesman, a man of honor from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, who would begin to call for a joint session of Congress that they might petition the President of the United States. Then it was Zachary Taylor, our 12th president, the one they referred to as Old Rough and Ready. He was born in Virginia. He was raised near Louisville, Kentucky. And suddenly they begin to summon him that he might make a day, a national day for prayer and fasting and humiliation before Almighty God, that we might see a stay of this contagion in our nation. A group of ladies, unbeknownst to them of all that was transpiring, they felt in Kentucky that they needed to buy a Bible and present it to the President of the United States. So they purchased a Bible in Frankfort, Kentucky, and they sent it to Old Rough and Ready himself, President Zachary Taylor. He did issue that day of prayer and fasting and humiliation before God on August the 3rd, 1849. And he built his proclamation around 4 areas: that we are to abstain, that we are to assemble, that we are to acknowledge, and we are to make an appeal to the Almighty God that he might stay the hand of this contagion. And I want to say to you that even today, even now, it is our time to once again make an appeal to heaven, that we might recall, remember history, and make an appeal to heaven, that the hand of the Lord might be stayed against this contagion globally. Will you join us today in a remembrance of history and a releasing of an appeal to heaven? Thank you for joining.